Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, Eli Olsberg.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Happy to have you, man.
I'm so happy to be here. I feel like this is, when you texted me about it, you were like, I feel like you'd be a perfect fit. I'm like, yeah, why haven't I?
I don't know. Well, you are one of the only comics who I know who has actively posted something about Letterboxd.
Yeah,
which that was like, oh yeah, so he gets it.
Yes, and I love it too because anytime I do post about it, I do end up like a few comics, and I will start following each other on there. And I think Letterboxd is great. It's fun. It's starting to. I'm worried it's going to fall into the thing where, rather than sincerely reviewing things, everyone's going to start doing bits as reviews. I already see it happening, and some people are very good at it. Like they review the movie and they're being funny about it. But I'm starting to notice it maybe too much, and I sometimes fall to it as well.
Yeah.
Like I'll admit it, but
right. So it's easy to do. I mean, that's the way we're thinking. That's the way we're wired.
Yeah, it still feels like it's in sincere mode, though. Mm-hmm. Like it's not layered in irony, and like it's cool because like a lot of filmmakers will also review films on there, and like they get big followings off it.
Yeah, a lot of filmmakers, a lot of like legitimate film critics I've seen on there.
Yeah.
So it's I remember somebody sent it to me, and I was like, "This is great." I don't know why. Yeah, that's something. It feels so sophisticated,
and I know. Yeah, and it's not. And I also like that that you can keep logs and lists of when you've seen stuff. Mm-hmm. And like I started a 2019 list of just movies I've seen this year, and because I realized the last like 2 or 3 years. Especially since I would say the last 2 years, actually, especially like when MoviePass and Cinemia were really at their. I was an early adopter of Cinemia, actually.
R.I.P.
I know, R.I.P. I signed up for it literally about a month before MoviePass went into that really cheap mode.
Oh, really?
And I've known about MoviePass for like 5 years because my roommate was an early adopter of MoviePass. He actually has had it back when it was like, which was still a good deal if you really like. I remember, I think he was paying $50 a month for the unlimited, and that is if you live in Los Angeles, that's literally the price of 3 movies. So, and he was going way more than that.
Did you used to get snacks with MoviePass back in the day too?
No,
I remember. I thought something about like getting a popcorn.
There was a deal I think through Groupon for that, but they did not. And I know MoviePass, one of their big ideas was they were eventually going to provide some kind of a reward program or some kind of way of insulating concessions into it.
Right.
But I got Cinemia early on because I spent more time at the time. I spent more time going to ArcLight and theaters where advanced ticketing was really important, and MoviePass always, so that's why I had never signed up for it initially, and I loved it. And then MoviePass did drop that to that $9.95. So between the two of them, I was paying $25 a month, and I could literally go to ArcLight or whatever AMC or the Grove or wherever I wanted to go. And so the point of all this is with Letterboxd, I realized like more recently that I was like, oh, I could keep track of. It was really hard to make like an end of the year favorites list, and which like lists are always arbitrary, but it's still fun to like champion your shit because usually there's something there that other people don't talk about that you really get to like yell about.
Oh yeah, I love doing that.
Yeah. So and this put that because I've already seen 35 movies this year. That's what the count is.
It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, some of those were double features, and some of those, but most of them were theatrical, and the few that weren't were like on like Netflix or something.
Right.
But I do spend more time going to the movies than I do watching stuff at home.
I'm about 50-50 now, especially doing the podcast is like if I haven't watched a movie that somebody wants to talk about, then I will absolutely watch it.
Sure.
Unless for whatever reason my schedule does not allow it, I will try and make the time. Or I'll rewatch movies too, for the
Yeah.
most part, unless it's something that I've seen recently, like the one we're talking about today,
Yeah.
which is Jurassic Park.
Yes.
By the way, just to break
Yeah.
that, so we're not gushing about a Social Network for too long. But yeah, and like I saw, so one of the episodes that I did early on the show was Jurassic World, and my friend who I did the episode with, he knew I hadn't seen Jurassic Park, and he said the caveat to doing the episode is you have to see Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. You have to watch both, or else I will not talk about Jurassic World with you.
Interesting. Well, yeah, it does kind of have, and I've actually seen all of them for different reasons.
Every single one?
Yeah, I saw Jurassic Park. Well, Jurassic World I saw because I was on the road, and it was a Tuesday. And the venue we were performing at was directly across the street from a movie theater.
Okay.
And what most people like, this is not news to anyone that's listening from somewhere that's not like Los Angeles or New York or Boston or San Francisco. But in most other cities, I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that is not Raleigh. Sorry, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Gotcha.
And so on a Tuesday, I got to sit in a reclining chair theater for $5. That's like their way of getting people to go see,
Yeah.
So even in 2015, that's like a big,
Oh, that's a huge. I mean, I remember that I would go back in my whenever I go visit my parents, they have one of the reclining seat theaters.
Yeah,
$4 matinees.
Yeah, it's like so cheap, and so. I was like, well, the movie's been out for 3 weeks. I honestly I saw everything else I wanted to see up to that point, I think. Mm-hmm. And so 2 of the other people really wanted to go see it. So we went and watched it. And I definitely enjoyed it more than any of the other Jurassic Parks I've enjoyed it.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And then I just realized I have not seen the newest Jurassic World.
The one
that was
J.A.
directed by the guy who directed The Orphanage. Yeah. I haven't seen that one. Which that would be a huge selling point for me if I hadn't seen I was like, oh, really? The director of The Orphanage, right? That's who I believe.
Yeah, The Orphanage and The Impossible.
Yes, and then I haven't seen that one. It also just looked really bad. But part 3 I saw because I worked at a movie theater at the time, and so I didn't have to pay to watch it, and I just sat there and watched it, and then. I mean, I'm never going to get over the fact that in part 3 that a dinosaur talks in a dream sequence, just says his name. But
right.
And then Lost World, I saw at a friend's sleepover, so I didn't have a choice. It was just a few of us were watching it, and then the first one I saw. So this is what's wild about the original Jurassic Park for me is. My mom bought a ticket for me when I was 8 years old. I went and watched it. I was so bored. I walked out 40 minutes in.
At age 8
years old.
You were bored with Jurassic Park?
Yeah. And
Eli. Oh, no.
Well, so I revisited it. Of course, I went to watch it later in my life thinking I was just probably a bored 8-year-old.
Right.
And then I rewatched it again and I was like, I don't like this movie. And then I was 16 or 17 at the time. And wait, when did Jurassic Park 3 came out? Because I watched it around the same time of that one.
Jurassic Park 3, I think, was
2001.
Yeah, so I remember I saw that with my dad in theaters.
So I actually broke up, me and another usher at the theater had to get involved. 2 families got in a fight, apparently in the theater. One of them was talking or something, and then the other one went to tell the other family to stop talking. And apparently that guy said to the person complaining, he goes, "Hey, go fuck your mother." And they got outside and started arguing. And then finally, me and the other usher were like, okay, we're going to either both of you have to leave. We'll give all of you passes. We just wanted to diffuse the whole thing. And then as we're giving them passes, the big family leaves first. And then the second one with just his son, the one who supposedly said, go fuck your mother, he goes, just remember, there's 2 sides to every story. And he walks away. And I was just like, my first thought was, you for sure said it then.
Yeah.
Who that was just crazy. The way he said it in such a way that was such a clearly a sales pitch of I didn't do it, rather than just being and of course it was the 2 dads in the situation that were posturing and me fuck you. So I went, that's when I rewatched Jurassic Park again, and I just didn't like it. And then I tried again a few years ago. I remember after the 3D release, I was like, I'll go sit and watch it in a theater, maybe seeing it the way it was meant to be seen.
Mm-hmm. I
never got around to doing that. So then just a few years ago, after Jurassic World, but sometime before the last one, somewhere in that 3-year stretch, I watched it again and truly have come to the conclusion that it is not a good movie.
Man, that's I mean, you took that many cracks at it, then
Yep.
I am dying to hear what about this movie, because I hadn't seen it. Here's my Jurassic Park history.
Wait, before you go with
Go
this,
for
I
it.
just want to say there is one movie I've gone back and forth on besides Jurassic Park where I've given several cracks at it and I've actually come out with different opinions on it, which is Basic Instinct.
I've never seen Basic Instinct.
That's a movie where it really it's got a lot of problems. It always has and it always will. But when I first saw it, I didn't like it. And then when I saw it again, I was like, wait, I think everybody's operating at the level of that they know this is trash. And then I watched it again and I was like, you know what? It's still too long and boring. This is just a big budget B movie with A material attached to it. So I've gone back and forth. So I do give other movies a shot, but I think after Jurassic Park, I'll tell you everything about it once you go through your history.
I have a very limited. I mean, I grew up and I wasn't allowed to watch movies like Jurassic Park, and basically because it was PG-13, right? So
wow,
that was
how old were you
when it came out? So Jurassic
93.
Park is 93. I was 3 years old when Jurassic Park came out, but then until I grew up super sheltered, and I was in a very strong Christian base household.
I see.
So
PG-13 was a literal rating for you guys.
Yes, exactly.
Because most people, even the MPAA says that people under 13 can usually handle these movies. It's just like it's more of a cautionary warning, whereas like rated R is actually a law that you can't, if you're under 17, you can't be in the theater alone. Right,
exactly. And so for all intents and purposes, for my family, if I was not literally guided by a parent, if there was no parental guidance, I was not allowed to watch a PG-13 movie.
Wow.
Until I was 13. So I remember seeing Jurassic Park 3 in theaters, and it felt like I was pulling the wool over someone's eyes, because I saw it with my dad and I was like, oh, this is cool. He knows what I want to do. And I don't remember a whole lot. I remember there being like the bridge scene with the pterodactyls.
Oh yeah.
But that's all I really remember.
Oh, was that the last time you saw it as well?
Yeah, I'd only seen it the one time.
So the reference that I made in regards to the talking dinosaur, there's a dream sequence near the end where Sam Nell's character, a small, I believe it's a velociraptor, just looks at him and goes, Alan. And then I
remember this vaguely.
So it's just like, you cannot believe it's happening while you're watching it. I remember just being like, who thought this was a good idea? I don't know. There's part of me that's like, maybe the directors just wanted to have a good laugh about it. But at the same time, I don't know. It just seemed like I don't know. I've watched that clip. So as my roommate, we've watched it together numerous times, and just like, it's incredible.
I'm gonna look that clip up. That sounds. I mean, because I'd seen like the very end of Jurassic Park as it had come on. It's a basic cable movie.
It is, yeah,
through and through.
They all are, because they're all PG-13, but only in the sense that like there's like off-screen carnage, and what on-screen carnage is there safe because there's no blood. It also reveals all the MPAA's flaws.
Oh, for sure. It's very. But that's so I've seen for years, the only part of Jurassic Park I had seen was from the kids in the kitchen and the raptors come in. Yeah. And from there on out. And so that was my entire context for the movie. I had no idea what happened in the preceding. I mean, at that point, the movie's 2 and something hours long.
Barely, yeah. I want to say it's like maybe at most 2:15.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
I was only privy to the last 20 minutes of the movie total.
Wow. That's wild.
For years.
Yeah.
And then, I just never saw it. And then I watched it and I was like, okay. I see what the hype's all about. But to me, I also there's like a part of me that really wanted to. It felt like I understood the mindset of what Spielberg was going for, as far as I want to make he basically seemed like he wanted to make the perfect popcorn movie.
Yes,
for the time. And all of a sudden, you have you're bringing in technology that people have not seen in a blockbuster like that before, and this actual. The characters don't really matter so much.
Yes.
It's just about, I get to watch dinosaurs for 2 hours.
Right. But the thing is, he's always made popcorn movies where you do give a shit about everybody. So that's one of my chief problems with the movie, is that it's this group of people who, one, the they become like surrogate parents on the island.
Yes.
But I don't know. I have a hard time believing that. I don't know. I don't actually think they ever establish a strong enough connection in that level
between the
between,
parents,
like Sam
surrogate
Nell
parents.
That whole thing. And there's some. I know there's some stuff there that really, like, some people would argue otherwise, but I don't think so. I also think because, like, Spielberg specifically deals in like happy endings. Obviously Schindler's List and a few others excluded.
Right.
But he deals in like a great example of this. I remember watching War of the Worlds, which is a generally not a liked movie, and it's rightfully so. The son supposedly dies in this big explosion that happens, but you don't physically see it. You see him run towards everybody where the explosion's happening.
Right.
And then at the end of the movie, they get to the house and the son's there. He's alive. And that is one that's super wildly like lazy. But also like it just shows he just really wants a happy ending. Though I would argue conversely with Jurassic Park, that's the problem I have with it. I'm like, I can go all over the place with this. I'm trying to pace myself.
Please. Go wherever you want to go.
One other thing I wanted to say was like, I think AI is actually a masterpiece, and people failed that movie when it came out.
Really?
Absolutely. I think that movie is incredible, and I think that ending, that sort of happy ending, is completely earned. Supposedly that's actually Kubrick's ending, not Spielberg's.
Okay.
There's a lot of debate to like what's what, and I don't want to read into it because I think ultimately no one's going to have the answers. I think even if people were objectively told the truth, like, oh, all of this is actually Kubrick's doing, so many people would either look at it as like they're lying, the people who defend it, and then other people being like, no, it's Spielberg's, that he ruined it.
Right.
No, I think it's a great movie, and I think it's a movie I still think about.
Man, it's a movie. That's another one that I feel like I need to revisit because I saw it as a kid, and I think it might have been too heady for me as a kid to understand.
That was the year, and that also came out the same year as Jurassic Park 3, 2001. That came out a few months before. I was working at the movie theater. I watched it then. And I remember that's when I started understanding heady movies more. That was one of the first ones that I felt really like I didn't feel like I was like, I don't get it. I walked away like really affected by it. And then inversely, a few months later, I saw Mulholland Drive and didn't get it, but fucking loved it. It was the first movie that I like felt without understanding.
Yep,
and
I get that.
It took like 4 viewings for me to crack the code on that movie. And it was a gift at the time. He made that DVD, the original DVD, with no chapter breaks. You had to watch it from beginning to end.
Oh, that's a fucking brilliant move.
Yeah,
because that's one of those movies I occasionally. I have a feeling after I watch a movie where I immediately want to watch it again. And sometimes I do. And Mulholland Drive was one of those movies.
I had to watch it at like an art house theater on like a Sunday night. There was like 8 people there. And then they re-released it in January for award season because he got a Best Director nomination.
Yep.
And I took another friend of mine to go see it. And I loved it even more the second time. And I watch it about once a year now.
It's
like in my top 10
movie.
of all time.
I think it's right around there for me. It might be like 11.
It's a great movie. And so anyway, back to Spielberg and his.
So Spielberg he likes to do a happy ending.
Typically, yeah. And with Jurassic Park, I think knowing that later on watching it, that my whole problem with the movie is essentially two major problems.
Mm-hmm.
One, I think the movie is very boring. That's the ultimate problem with it. That's why I walked out as a kid. I also feel like it's a big budget slasher movie with dinosaurs instead of Michael Myers.
Right. That makes sense.
And I think that also, I don't care about anybody in the movie. And that the main crew is going to be okay in the end. Everybody else is fair game.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, like, just to be clear, there are some effective scenes and like shots that I'm really like, there's that great shot of the Velociraptor, I believe, that goes up to the window and like his breath fogs.
Oh, yeah.
Great shot of the dinosaur, his eye coming through the window. You know what I mean? But like, it really had a when I was watching it the very last time I watched it, I just kept thinking to myself, I'm like, this is clearly a movie that was made for its time. Like, I wonder if I was like 14, I probably would have dug it a little more.
Right.
But also, I have come to terms with when it comes to family films or anything that's like that kind of mainstream. I love mainstream cinema, by the way. I will watch anything, anytime, anywhere for the most part.
Very good. I appreciate that about you.
Very few things don't get me going. I'll say what they are. It's typically fantasy films, like Game of Thrones. I can't watch it.
We're kindred spirits, Eli.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I've never been a high fantasy person.
Lord of the Rings, when I watched it in theaters, I liked it a lot, the first one, but I bought it on DVD as soon as it came out, because at this point I was working and I could afford DVDs.
Right.
And like, I took it home, I started watching it. I could not get past 20 minutes of it. And not in that it's a bad movie. It's just, I realized, I was like, oh, this is not for me. I can watch the Harry Potter movies. I believe I've seen every single one of them. I couldn't give you, with the exception of the one that I believe it's Prisoner of Azkaban. That's the one Quaron directed.
Yep.
That's the only one that I can remember specific shots from.
Right.
And actually the first one too. What I remembered about it, watching it in theaters, I was like, oh, this is pretty fucking dark for a kid's movie.
Right. That's how I felt about, like, well, I mean, the books and the films kind of age up with the characters anyway, but that's how I felt like for sure Prisoner of Azkaban and Half-Blood Prince. I remember some specific shots from that being like, oh, this is how I imagined it going down in the book.
Is that the first one that came out in 3D?
I don't remember. I don't even remember any of the Harry Potter movies being
That's
in 3D.
Also the first one. Yeah, it might not have been. It might not have been retrofitted, but I could be wrong about that. But I remember something about that one where I think Harry was tied up. But I remember there was one. Oh, no. That was the one I remember now. That was the first one where you could tell they were getting older.
Yes.
Like they started, the voices were deeper. And I'm like, oh, okay, the characters are aging, and it's impressive whenever those things, I mean, look, a lot of franchises, people can say certain things about them being maybe by the numbers or cash grabs, but if they actually keep up their stories, I think it's very impressive.
Right.
Specifically with Harry Potter and obviously like Endgame, that was the big thing. Like,
for sure.
That is a cultural moment that I don't care whether you like it or not. I think it should be acknowledged that like all these actors came together and they actually managed to tie it. Even though realistically, you only have had to have seen the last 3 or 4 movies to really understand what's happening in Endgame.
Yeah, I have not seen anything beyond. I missed basically the entire middle of the Marvel Cinematic Universe because superhero movies are not really my thing. But then I got in for Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok, and Infinity War.
Which are the best ones.
Exactly.
I also thought Winter Soldier was incredible.
I've heard it's great.
Yeah. But most of them have a big villain problem. They all have the big complaints that most people I think are actually right. The villains are rarely interesting. The best ones had the most interesting villains. And I also think that most of them early on, with the exception of maybe the first Iron Man, a lot of them just didn't have a lot of memorable stuff to them. It was just cool to be able to see them done on such a big scale.
Yeah. There's something about the way that, like, specifically with like fantasy stuff too, that it bumps with me. Like, I remember I saw Lord of the Rings 2 Towers in theaters with my entire family and I fell asleep. And I was asleep for the last maybe 45 minutes of the movie. Where they were like, "How could you fall asleep? It was so loud." And I was like, and at the time I was like, "I don't know," but now I'm just like, "Oh, that stuff is I don't get it." It's not that I don't get it; it's just that it's like it's boring to me.
Right. Yeah, it just doesn't do anything for me. So I never look at them as like. I mean, they're obviously pretty big achievements,
right?
I also I think. I'm a huge fan of Peter Jackson's early work.
I've never seen any of like his early splattery kind of movies.
Bad Taste and Dead Alive here. It's known as Brain Dead internationally. Are both super fun, insane like movies. He also has I haven't watched it in years, but he has one called Meet the Feebles.
It's weird Muppet sort of parody movie.
Yes, which there were 2 that came out at the time. That one and another one, which I think was meant to be more porno-y was called Let My Puppets Come. I forget who directed it, but if these things come out in pairs.
Wow.
Infamous and Capote.
True.
Let My Puppets Come and Meet the Feebles.
Darkest Hour in Dunkirk.
That's right. They're all gonna. So I'm trying to think what other. And Peter Jackson also did Heavenly Creatures.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen The Frighteners in a long time, and I wasn't crazy about it at the time. But most of his stuff leading up to Lord of the Rings was all really good stuff. Very Sam Raimi-ish, in terms of they have the very similar trajectory where they made the jump to these big budget movies. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen They Shall Not Grow Old, and I really do, because I obviously when he does something that he's really passionate about, he really goes for it. I haven't seen the Hobbit trilogy.
Me either.
And I won't. Yeah, I'm like, you know what? That to me I just have zero interest in it. Mm-hmm. So,
but back to Schindler's List and Jurassic Park.
Yeah, these
same
things come out in pairs.
So what else? But what else bugs you about Jurassic Park?
Well, so I'd like to break down more of the things that I'm talking about here,
sure.
In terms of why it's boring. I think the characters ultimately and I also, anytime I go on to anywhere to talk about a movie, one thing I like to see is if I'm on the same page as Roger Ebert. He's I love reading his shit. I highly recommend it. So he gave it 3 stars.
Say? Okay.
Which is just a mildly passing review. And he said, it succeeds on a technical level. He's but the characters aren't terribly interesting. And he also said that his big thing was, well, in Jaws and Close Encounters, he waits until the end for the big reveals, and he should have done that in Jurassic Park. He goes, as soon as we get the dinosaurs at the beginning, it deflates everything. That is not how I felt about it.
Mm-hmm.
How I felt about it was even when I saw the dinosaurs, the kind of sense of wonderment, there's one where he lays on the dinosaur to feel it feel it breathing and its heartbeat and all that. That was a good scene. I like that. But then just watching them run around or watching them try to survive it. I mean, just the idea that at one point, one of the kids is climbing a gate and he gets shocked, and then they just revive him with CPR and keep going. I didn't think he was going to die at any point.
Well, of course not.
Yeah. I think it would be a lot more interesting if an adult was climbing it and died, and they had to deal with the implications.
That would have been better
in a darker timeline.
Well, there's part of me too. I remember watching it, and I enjoyed it, but there's parts that I thought this is real flimsy characterization. The villain of the movie, right, is Wayne Knight, ostensibly.
Yeah,
but he's dispatched and gone, and there's still probably about 45 minutes of movie left by the time he's gone.
That scene is literally a slasher movie death scene. He gets in the car and he turns and it's there and it spits the thing in his face, but then it cuts to just the car shaking and him being killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's you know what other movie did that a little differently? Scream 2.
Yep.
Jamie Kennedy gets pulled in the van. You see it rock and blood come. Obviously, it's rated R, so they're going to go for it.
Right.
But it's those things you see in other movies before. So it didn't feel outside of the movie. Obviously, Spielberg was really in love with making that movie. I don't think I think War of the Worlds was the first one in a long time where he felt very it didn't feel like there was any passion to the project.
Mm-hmm. I buy that.
Jurassic Park, I think he genuinely loved making it, and I think he really put his all into it. But I just found myself not responding to it. I think for people, what's also interesting, by the way, is the talent pool in that movie. All of them went on to do shit, or if they hadn't already done stuff. But I know the younger girl was in a movie that I liked a lot, specifically obsessed with the soundtrack of Angus, which was a movie that came out 2 years later.
I've never even heard of this movie.
Ooh, it's what stars a very young James Van Der Beek as the villain.
Oh.
It's just a coming of age high school movie.
Okay.
And he, the lead kid, I don't think went on to really do. I think he does stuff, but on a very unknown level, character actor.
Gotcha.
The guy who plays his best friend became the Shermanator in the American Pie movies.
Oh, okay.
But that was a movie that I was obsessed with. A lot of the bands that were on the soundtrack, it was a punk soundtrack, pop punk soundtrack in particular. But anyway, and now she, I think, is retired and is a painter or something. I was talking to someone about doing this podcast a few days ago and we were looking it up. And they're like, oh yeah, she's a painter now or a teacher somewhere or something.
I love seeing when that kind of stuff pops back into life.
But she probably still gets residual checks for that.
She should. I mean, if there's any justice in this world, she's gonna get stuck because this is gonna air. This airs, I'm sure, on TNT or whatever the current like streaming version of TNT is for.
It's on Netflix now.
Yeah, it's good. You're gonna make money off of this. This is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, sure. Yeah, totally. And up until that point, I was looking at Spielberg's filmography and also how I felt about his. I like a lot of his stuff. And I remember when I was younger, I was also another one of his movies I didn't like at the time, but one that I've come around to liking since was Close Encounters. I thought Close Encounters of the Third Kind was also kind of boring, but I realized at that point I think I was still fresh off the Jurassic Park juice. I saw them literally when I was 16. That's when I saw both of them. So I watched Close Encounters again a few years later, like when I was in my early 20s, and I actually liked it like a lot.
Yeah.
And also even like his other failures were like 1941 is not a good movie, but it's an interesting failure. Whereas like Jurassic Park to me is just, here's the other thing. He creates a world, right? This island, Isla Nebular.
Yes.
He creates this world, but it felt like, and I didn't know what the feeling was until I went on the ride. It felt like Jurassic Park, the ride. Like you can almost smell, the rainforest cafe-ness of it. That's the only way I know how to describe it.
You feel the mist coming into your room as you're watching it.
Yeah, it didn't feel like they were out in nature to me. It felt like very... like they were not on sets. I don't want to make it sound like it's cheap, but it did have this like this feeling of being artificial, and maybe that's the point because it's obviously their intent was to make it a theme park,
right?
But I never watching it was like felt like I was transported somewhere else. It's funny because it's not a movie that I hate. It's just a movie I don't like.
It's interesting because it's like. I feel like one of the things that I'm sort of hearing, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure,
but it's I feel like you like Spielberg as a director, but you know he can do better.
Yes,
and you see a movie like Jurassic Park where you're like, just come on, man, just like give me, put in some of the emotion or something that I know you're capable of doing.
That's a very good assessment that I didn't even realize. Yeah, that's a great observation. That's exactly what it is for me. I guess I just don't think it clicks in that way. Like everybody's just, I mean, Jeff Goldblum at this point he's just being Pete Goldblum in the movie,
right?
And I think that like, and again, they're all great actors in the movie. Like, you know, Richard Attenborough plays the
he's the doctor who's in charge of the guy.
Jurassic Park. Yep.
You got, and Laura Dern she's good, but she's also, I don't think she's utilized very well in this movie.
No, not at all. Compared to like, you know, it was really like Sam Neill kind of took the reins. Here's the other thing. At the end, there isn't really like. What's an interesting thing about it is at no point all they're trying to do is escape the dinosaurs, and maybe it would have been more interesting if they actually fought back in full, like it went like a full tilt boogie kind of like, right. Because at the end, and I don't know if that's entirely right because it would be a different kind of movie, maybe a movie that I would like, but I do think that at the end they escape. And they're saved by just a bigger dinosaur that wanted to eat these two dinosaurs that was just distracted from eating them at the moment. And then they were able to get all the comms back up to get out of there. In that way, it's like a theme park ride. Yeah.
On the score, I think a lot of that, the score also does a lot to make it feel very triumphant and theme park ridey.
Yeah.
Because like, as soon as the theme comes in, any moment we're like, oh, the T-Rex comes crashing through and eats the velociraptors, and it's like, bah, 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 and it's like, oh, they're gonna make it, it's gonna be okay.
And it is, for what it's worth, it is a great score. That's my favorite part probably of the movie.
It's a great score.
I actually, when I was in band in 7th grade, I was on percussion and I was playing timpani for that. Ooh. So the that like build up. I did that. So that was the other big problem with the ending. It's like they escaped and that's it. It's over. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it doesn't really feel cathartic.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The takeaway I got from the movie watching it was, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
But fun doesn't have a lot of weight to it necessarily.
Which is fine. I mean, look, I love the Fast and the Furious movies.
Yeah.
Fuck me up.
Tons of fun.
Yeah. And that's a franchise that somehow has managed to. We're in an era where like, a part 5, 6, 7, 8 are way more enjoyable than their predecessors, which is like usually rare. Though I do have a soft spot for the first and the second one because the second one they shot in my hometown.
Oh, really?
I'm from South Florida.
Too Fast, Too Furious.
And I was on the set for it. So one of my friends was an extra, so I got to sneak on.
That's right. I saw you talk about you posted a John Singleton story.
Yes, I got to meet him there. Yeah, he was very, very nice. So it was like, and I was the only person who went up and talked to him. Like everybody else was trying to meet. I was there for the night shoot when it was Paul Walker, Devin Aoki, Ludacris, and that was it. Those were the three. They were shooting their scenes for that, and so everyone was trying to meet them or go near them.
Right.
And so I just went up to him and I was like, "Hey, love your stuff." And he was like, "Cool, man." He goes, "Well, look, I told him I was like about to graduate high school and I want to go to film school." He's like, "Well, you just got to keep writing. That's the big thing." Which is funny because reading a lot of apparently his advice to a lot of the filmmakers that he was producing their works and stuff was to focus on the writing. Which was cool. That was like a cool thing to read that I'm like, oh, he's always championed writing. That's really awesome.
That's good. It comes, I mean, it ultimately comes back to it. I think that, like to tie back to Jurassic Park has, I get it. You can watch it and we know what's going on. Just a sec. And you know what's happening. And then it doesn't feel like there's a lot of care that's put into it because we know, okay, this is going to be easy to follow along. We don't need to make something that's going to have people being like, wait, what the fuck is supposed to be happening?
Yeah, totally. Is that's David Koepp's? He's the sole writer.
Michael Crichton also is credited as the screenplay.
As a screenwriter.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like Crichton. He's an interesting, by the way, as a filmmaker, he is fascinating. I did not try reading any of his books. I do think that he, so he has a movie that he made with Tom Selleck. It was, I believe, his first directorial movie called Runaway. Highly recommend it. I actually think outside of it has a lot of things that didn't age well. Gene Simmons was cast as the villain. And it has to do with like in the near future, like technology becomes there's like a sentient robot that gets loose, but it's not like an android that can walk and talk. It's essentially like a little more. If I remember correctly, it's basically like a more glorified Roomba. And but it like and there's like a gun that. They make like this technology that it's like the starting point of the apocalypse rather than being like, oh, the robots have taken over like iRobot. Like there's a bullet, I think, that goes in your body and then detonates like a bomb. Like there's really cool stuff in it.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Highly recommend it. I think it's on one of the platforms because I've seen it on there. Again, it's called Runaway. And he also he had a really fascinating bad movie with Burt Reynolds that he directed called Physical Evidence. I believe with Teresa Russell. It is like it's so crazy what an undeveloped melodrama it is. It's weird that, and it came out before Jurassic Park. Like I want to say like 4 years before. I think he was 89. And Burt Reynolds had kind of already his star kind of
washed out,
waned at that point. I think that it's fascinating to see like someone who made this thing like that eventually became Jurassic Park versus like these other movies in the 80s that seemed very low budget and some of them ahead of its time.
Yeah. It feels like I want to see those movies. Those movies intrigue me on a level where I'm like, oh, it feels like I'm going to get affected by that movie to some degree.
Yeah.
That's what I like the most. My favorite Spielberg movie is E.T. because I watched it as a kid and I was like, this is a really unique and interesting movie. And I identified with it as a kid. And then I watched it as an adult and it hit me in such an emotional, on a deep emotional level. And I was surprised by it. And Jurassic Park is fun, but I'm not feeling emotional. I don't get attached to anything in this movie. Yeah.
And I think part of it, one thing I'll say in regards to Jurassic Park as a positive is that the dinosaurs still look great.
They do.
And he has him and James Cameron both very much have that approach where he's like, I'm going to tell a story and the technology will help rather than the technology will dictate the story, which I think happens more now.
Yeah.
But I also just don't think it succeeds at that level. Like I think they were so enamored with the world of Jurassic Park that I think for them that was enough. And it also like when I watch his other stuff like E.T. I love, and I think it also hits hard for me when I watch it now on two levels. One, as like it does still have those elements that worked upon initial viewing, but I think also like there's this nostalgia part to it.
Oh, for sure.
And I think another one that of his that I mean, I think his best movie is still Jaws, because that is a movie that it's not just about holding back the shark. The characters are interesting characters. And it's also one of those where a lot of people have argued that the movie might be better than the book, because I don't know if you know, in the book of Jaws, like there's like an affair that happens with his wife.
Oh boy.
I believe with the Richard Dreyfuss character. That I could be wrong about, but if I remember correctly, he has an affair with Brody's wife.
Okay.
Chief Brody. And it's a very complicated thing that barely focuses on the shark until the very end. Whereas this one, like, yeah, I don't know. The movie just it's very perfect in my opinion.
I gotta watch. I've still never seen Jaws.
Oh,
I know.
Okay, yeah, and well, I mean, do you know how it ends?
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently in the original script, Richard Dreyfuss' character does die. They apparently forgot to film it, and that's why he pops up at the end and they swim back together. Yeah. But I was okay with that in this case. I thought there was something interesting about the guy who was most prepared for battling with the shark was the only one who ended up getting eaten. And I also think that like a lot of his 80s stuff, I thought that I haven't seen it since probably like 2003, but I remember loving The Color Purple. And I remember loving, Schindler's List is a great movie.
I haven't seen shit. Spielberg is like, I mean, he's got such a vast filmography.
He's got a lot of,
I haven't seen.
How do you feel about the Indiana Jones movies?
I like Indiana Jones trilogy. I mean, the fourth
I'm glad
one.
you called it a trilogy.
Exactly.
We don't talk about the fourth.
We don't talk about the fourth. Who knows what's going to happen with the fifth?
Yeah.
I'm throwing up my hands. I mean, he still is evidenced, Ready Player One is enough of a popcorn movie in the vein of...
Which I haven't seen it yet.
It's fine. I mean, I had more fun watching Jurassic Park than I did watching Ready Player One. Ready Player One, you can see the sort of... I feel like you can see his age as a popcorn filmmaker coming up a little bit more.
That's what I think about that too, because I that's what felt like the issue was with War of the Worlds, like at the time, specifically because I was at the height of the kind of when the tides had turned on Bush,
right?
And I remember they tried to at one point, like the Dakota Fanning character screams, "Are those the terrorists?" And there's so much there that could have been revealed, like that could have been done that really wasn't done. And I think he just didn't. I don't know if he's ready to, like, those are the kinds of stories he could tell. Though I'll say, I mean, look, I think his two most interesting movies were back to back, and which was AI and Minority Report. I think those are two incredible, up near his best work, in my opinion.
I got to rewatch those. I saw those when they were out. I saw AI in theaters. I saw Minority Report on DVD at some point.
A lot of people argue that Minority Report, which also, by the way, has like a really cool look to it. He used like a bleach bypass thing that really makes the movie look like it has like this cool kind of almost like metallic look to it, similar to AI, but AI I think was actually a little probably more colorful than Minority Report, because Minority Report was going more for like a noir.
Yeah, sort of like dystopian noir-ish.
Yeah. But I think that like even that's another movie where there's a happy ending attached to it, but I think I think it's more earned. A lot of people I remember at the time were really pissed. They were like, "No, it should have stopped when he should have still gone and gotten locked up, and it should have been an irony thing." And I was like, I don't know if that's. I don't know. It worked in that movie. I thought everything that the characters went through and the way, specifically in Spielberg's machine, how that works, it fully works. And there's also incredible action scenes in it. And so, and to bring it back to Jurassic Park, I thought the action scenes weren't particularly like, I mean, they're obviously more low key. It's not really like it's more in the vein of like an Indiana Jones action sequence where it's more of like just missed moments and jumping out of the way and not getting eaten and stuff. But aside from that scene, like when they're hiding and the little dinosaurs are coming in, there wasn't much of it that really like stuck with me. And by the way, Lost World has a really effective opening scene where the little girl goes behind sees all these little dinosaurs, and then suddenly they all start jumping on her. But you see it off, like you can just see off the. You don't see her getting eaten or anything, but it's like baby dinosaurs that are like the size like this big. They're they can fit but they all start jumping on her and she's screaming, and then the mom comes over and screams. That's a fucked up scene.
Yeah.
And yet later on they clarify it that she was like fine.
But why you got to do that?
Right, exactly.
Come on.
I mean, the sequels
Take
are
the risk.
Clearly more of a budget thing. They weren't really concerned with particularly Lost World really felt like a job where everyone just it's a great idea. Bring the dinosaur to San Diego and run in the city, but it never really nothing in there. It's so bland.
Yeah.
And Jurassic Park, I think, just falls in that wheelhouse for me. It just feels really bland at times, and it doesn't even with the sense of setting, it just doesn't have a sense of atmosphere.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will disagree with me on that, as we know, because it was, to a point, the highest grossing movie of all time.
Yeah, true. Well, if people do want to disagree with you, where can they contact you to disagree with you?
At Eli Olsberg on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd, if you're listening and you're on the Letterboxd.
Follow Letterboxd, please.
Yeah, and I have a podcast called Closure, the podcast that never ends, about how closure doesn't exist, and I interview different people and see if they feel that way based on a story or event in their life or an ongoing thing. Sometimes it's just talking about an ongoing condition they have or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
But and I also have a podcast I co-host with Teresa Lee called Pod as a Woman, where we break down Ariana Grande songs track by track.
Oh.
And that's about all the stuff I can think of to plug right now. I feel like I'm missing something.
Lots to go with in there.
Yeah.
Oh, and performance anxiety.
Oh, yeah, and if you live in Los Angeles, I have a monthly stand-up show called Performance Anxiety at the Pleasure Chest in West Hollywood, and it's super fun. And yeah, thank you for reminding me of that.
Of course, it's a fun show. It's Pleasure Chest is a fun venue. You got a lot of it's what I like about being at your show is that there's so much visual distraction that you wind up not focusing on because the comedians are so good.
Yes, and I think for people who don't know, it's in a sex shop, but a very fun, cool one.
Yep.
It's not it also I do think because of that, people are it's such as to be in that location, it just puts everyone in a better mood to watch a show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Rather than a low lit bar
ready
show.
to have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Ready to be pleasured.
Right.
You can follow me at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd. I can't believe I haven't plugged Letterboxd more. I love Letterboxd.
Oh yeah, champion it.
And if you like this show, please leave a rating and subscribe and tell a friend and do the same for Eli's podcast and all platforms. We appreciate it.
And thank you for having me, dude.
Dude, thanks. You're a great guest. Thanks for being. I'm finally glad we got you on here. This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.